discipline is a mental muscle. But if you can build the force of will in your life to make the hard decision in every case, you'll beat 99% of the guys out there. You'll be so far ahead of the pack that there won't even be any competition.
This is Manlihood, the podcast for men who want to rise up and live with purpose. With your host, Josh Hatcher, this show is here to help you level up as a husband, father, leader, and man, with real conversations and strategies to help you in every area of your life.
Gentlemen, welcome to Manlihood Season 9. We're glad that you're here because you're helping us make men, better husbands, better fathers, better leaders. You're a part of it just by listening to this episode. So I'm glad that you're here. Listen, today's guest is a man that has seen the front lines of both war and culture. Today he's got a message that every man needs to hear. Today's guest, Chuck Holton. He's a combat veteran, a war correspondent, an author, a speaker. I got to meet him personally just recently. Fantastic dude. I love his writing and his work. He spent the last 2 decades reporting from conflict zones around the world. So if there's conflict and war breaking out, he's there. And he's in the line of fire. And he served some time in the U.S. Army's Elite 75th Ranger Regiment. He's worked as a freelance journalist and producer for CBN News and War Room with Steve Bannon and his own Hot Zone podcast. And he's covered everything from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan to humanitarian crises in Burma, Ukraine, and Syria. He's been there. He's seen it. He's also a frequent contributor on Fox News and Newsmax and written multiple books, including Making Men, Prowess, and Bulletproof Faith. So Chuck and I get into what it means to be a protector, why community and faith matter now more than ever, and how men can reclaim their purpose in a world that wants to tame them. So, before we get into that, make sure you subscribe to Manlihood Plus. We've got bonus content from a lot of our guests. We've got behind-the-scenes content, extra content you're not going to get anywhere else. You can subscribe at YouTube, and you can subscribe at Spotify. Make sure you grab my book, Fight Like Hell, a journal for men who won't back down. That's available at Amazon. And join the Facebook community. It's our group just for men. You can find it at the Manlihood Man Cave. I'd love to have you there. You're going to get some brotherhood, growth, iron, sharpening iron. I encourage you to check it out. All that being said, let's jump right into our conversation with Chuck Holton.
Chuck Holton, it's good to see you again. How's it going, man?
Great to see you, Josh. I'm glad to be here.
Where have you been lately? I know you're always kind of...
Oh, gosh. Working backwards. I was in the States for a little bit, and then I'm in Panama now. Then I was in Guyana. Then I was in Barcelona, and then Armenia, and then Kyrgyzstan, then Kazakhstan. Let's see, then Israel for a month. So that's just the last, couple of months.
Yeah, that's enough to keep you busy.
Yeah. I've only been in my own bed here in Panama for maybe 60 days this year.
Yeah. How does your body just get used to the jet lag and constant time zone changes?
I do a lot of jetting. I don't do a lot of lagging. I'm kind of a polyphasic sleeper anyway, and I sleep really well on airplanes, so I usually end up arriving pretty rested wherever I go.
That's good. So, I guess, we're having a conversation about where all you've been. Maybe our guests aren't familiar with you. Can you tell me a little bit about what you do? And you're all over the world.
I've been a war correspondent for 20 couple years, and so I go to wars and disasters and, all the bad places around the world. They need to have a war in Aruba sometime, someplace nice. But I don't know why they always pick like the worst places on planet Earth to fight over. Because if I lived in southern Afghanistan and somebody came and said, I'm going to take this from you, I'd be like, you can have it. I'll go somewhere else. I mean, it's not really worth fighting over. But maybe just because they don't have television. I don't know. So I have my own production company. I do freelance work for various different organizations, and there's a pretty small cadre of people who goes to the front lines and films things blowing up, and so it's more lucrative to sell that content to multiple different outlets. But it's amazing how the business has changed since I started. Back 2 decades ago, you'd have to have 4 people and an audio guy and a producer and $500,000 worth of equipment, and you'd have 16 bags that you're flying with, and I mean it was just a lot more difficult. Now it's like me and my iPhone, and that's it. And I can do pretty much everything with that. And I've been carrying a Starlink Mini lately. It's just unbelievable how much easier it is, and so that's led to some amazing changes in how you can make money in this business. My primary source of income these days is YouTube. And I never would have imagined that would have been the case. But there's a large segment of the population, mostly 65 and over, older people who have cut the cable because they had 200 channels of nothing worth watching. And so they just got rid of their cable and they just watch Netflix all the time. But when there is a immediate crisis of some sort, like an invasion or a bombing or something like that, they don't have anywhere to go to get live commentary on what's going on. And so they go to YouTube and find me, and I'm on there live, talking about whatever the crisis of the day is. And yesterday it was the secret meeting that Pete Hegseth called in Virginia for 800 generals and admirals from around the military, and everybody wanted to know what the heck that was all about. And I had like 58,000 people watching while I was live, just on that channel. So it's just amazing that we sort of stumbled into this niche where people really want to see that kind of content, and so there you go. And I can hold forth for an hour and talk about it and just show what there is to be shown out there, and people really like that.
I think we're definitely in an age where traditional media and journalism is always called into question, right? And for good reason. So I think somebody that they know they can trust to tell them the truth, I think, that there's definitely a market for that. So, Chuck, what, I know you've also talked a lot about your work with the Free Burma Rangers. You got a military background, and now you're actually out there being able to use that too. Maybe you could tell me a little bit about that story.
I actually served with Dave Eubank, the founder of the Free Burma Rangers, for about 6 months when I first joined the military back in 1987. We were in the same Ranger regiment. I didn't know him. He was a lieutenant or a captain, and I was a private, so we wouldn't have hung out or anything. But he ended up getting out of the military and starting this humanitarian aid organization called the Free Burma Rangers. It started in Burma, Myanmar, and it has branched out to war zones around the globe now, 20 plus years later. I first ran into him about 14 or 15 years ago, interviewed him in Thailand about his work in Burma. No, maybe we were in Burma. I don't remember. But the Free Burma Rangers is there to meet a particular need in every war zone or disaster, crisis. There's a gap between point of need and the point of care. That is where people are getting shot and where people can get help for being shot or can escape to. And there's a gap there because it's too dangerous for like the Red Cross or the UN or Samaritan's Purse or somebody like that to go in there. Their policies won't allow them to send their people right into the front lines. It's just too dangerous. So we're there to fill that gap, and we're made up of a lot of former military guys, former Rangers, former Delta Force, guys like that. We go armed often, and not to fight, but we will certainly defend ourselves because one of our tenets, one of our founding principles is that we won't run away if the people we're with can't run away. We're not going to leave people behind. So if you're not going to leave people behind and you don't want to get overrun and die, you might have to, hold off the enemy for a while so that your people can get away. And that makes us sort of unique among humanitarian aid, especially Christian-based humanitarian aid organizations. Some people have a problem with that, but again, we're not there to kill, we're there to save, but in order to save, sometimes you've got to at least hold off the enemy, keep his head down long enough for you to get out. And so we've been heavily engaged in assisting the Kurds and the Iraqis in the fight against ISIS. We've been in Syria a lot. We've been in Iraq a lot. We're still very present in Burma. We've got more than 90 teams. This is all Dave Eubanks doing it. I say we, but I just because I like. I mean, it's something I feel strongly about, passionate about. I try to go out with them on a mission at least once a year, someplace in the world, Ukraine or Burma or someplace, and it's very dangerous. Free Burma Rangers just in the last 2 years has probably lost 20 Rangers, been killed in the fighting, especially in Burma. Burma's been real bad. We've lost a couple in Syria and stuff as well. Last time I was in Burma, we were literally getting strafed by Russian MiG fighter jets, and we were hiding in a ditch next to the road, and looked over at Dave, and he said, "Can you believe, we're probably the only Americans that have ever been strafed by a Russian fighter jet. This is great." And he's just nuts. But he takes his family with him, his kids, his wife. They all go together, and they have built an amazing organization of like-minded individuals. And it's just, I just go because I like hanging around those guys. They're just my kind of people. And I don't have a lot of medical training other than just basic combat, stop the bleed and stuff from the military. I wish I did. So I feel like I can't do as much as I would like, but I drive the ambulance, or, I certainly go and try to get the word out by reporting on what they're doing. And it's an amazing organization.
Yeah. So do they have to get permission before they go into these places, or they just go in to help?
Sometimes. When we go into Syria, for example, the eastern third of Syria is controlled by the Kurds. They call it Rojava. And so because of our work in the fight against ISIS and all the lives we've saved, Kurdish lives we saved during that fight back in 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, the Kurdish government, which is kind of a semi-autonomous region of northern Iraq, they really like us. And so we have a piece of paper that says, from the Kurdish president, that says Free Burma Rangers can go anywhere they want, and they can take their vehicles and their weapons and help out wherever they want to in the area that's under our control. So that is what enables us to go into Syria, because we have permission from the Kurdish to do it. and that lets us cross the border from Iraq. In Burma, it's completely illegal. Everything we do in there, we have, there's a price on our heads. There are fighter jets and bombers that are up in the air searching for us constantly, and we have to, when we're driving around, we have to very often, probably at least once or twice a day, have to pull up and hide, and we carry camouflage nets to cover up our vehicles and pull them up under trees and stuff, and then go hide in the ditch while we wait for the planes to go away. But there's a big price on our heads in Burma from the Burmese military junta. But they're randomly killing civilians on a industrial scale in Burma. Most people don't understand how bad it is there, and that it is a war against Christians. The Christian hill tribes, the hill tribes of Burma are almost exclusively Christian. They were evangelized by Adoniram Judson, the first Southern Baptist missionary, and they converted almost en masse. And so if you went there and walked into one of their villages and they said, hey, we're having a worship service, you would feel right at home. They're singing the same songs you sang growing up. They're just doing it in their language. The order of worship is the same. Like everything, it's just that they're doing it in a clearing in the jungle instead of in a building. But the bottom line is the Burmese military junta, which is illegitimate, by the way. They're not the legitimately elected government of Burma. They just took over. They are killing upwards of 10,000 Christians a year in their, in their country. They have, I think, I've heard they have like the 15th largest military, and they're not at war with anybody except their own people. And again, they have put it in writing and said, we are going to kill or drive out all the Christians from our country. So when they find a hill tribe village, whether it's the Karen, Kareni, Shan, whatever, they just machine gun the village. They drop mortars on it, drive everybody out to come in and burn the village down, rape the women, kill the men, and carry off the children to slavery, and then sow landmines all around it so that nobody can, come back.
So yeah, it is wild that, you've got this organization of men who say, hey, let's go fight battles, and like I look at most of the American men that I know, right? And I think they all, probably the average American male owns 2.5 guns, right?
Is that all?
Yeah, the average probably, right? I'm sure there's a few of us that make that average a little bit higher, but
that's probably skewed that a little bit.
But I don't think they've ever even thought, how can I go out and use that? Do I want people shooting at me? No. And so we stay home. I was going to say,
a lot of people don't have the training, so they don't have the wherewithal to go to places like that. And this is something that's self-funded. Nobody pays us to go there. So that excludes more people. So basically we got a bunch of fairly well-off, old, broken down military special forces guys, and that's a pretty small subset. So, I wouldn't hold that against guys, but the thing that I'm kind of on about these days is that you don't need to go to Burma to find people that are in need. You can do that right in your own backyard, and there's a lot of need. There's a lot of danger. There's a lot of threat. And I believe that a man should make people safer wherever he goes. And so whether you're an accountant or a plumber or a Delta Force guy, you have a responsibility to arm yourself, train yourself, and be prepared to try to make the world a safer place wherever you are. And my most recent book, which is called Death of Civilization, talks about, that has a lot more to do with the relationships that you make than it has to do with the guns that you own or the 6 months of food you have in your basement. Being prepared and making your community more resilient and making your family safer it's much more important to develop and maintain the right relationships with the people around you. And that's something that we're really bad at in America these days. Most people don't even know who their neighbors are anymore. Most people would have no idea how to get a hold of they know how to call 911, right? But other than that, they don't know how to get a hold of the radio station. They don't know how to get a hold of the hospital. They don't have anything to offer when it comes to a localized or generalized loss of civility in their area, whether that's because of a hurricane, fire, flood, earthquake, riot, protest, whatever, EMP, we can go on down the list. But I believe that it is becoming very clear in America that things are not going to get better. American culture is going to continue to divide and devolve into sectarian, rancor. And because of that, there are things that we can do as men, and we should be very intentional about putting together groups of men who can counter that division and hatred and everything and actually prepare to help people when they're in need.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, things that we've seen on the news recently show that there are people who are so filled with hate that they're going to act out against.
And that's only getting worse as it's being encouraged.
And unfortunately, the people that, end up taking the bullets are usually, most of the time, people who might align with our values, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are exceptions, but for the most part, you get, and I mean, I don't think that tomorrow I have to worry about being assassinated like Charlie Kirk. But then part of me wonders, am I doing things right if I'm making somebody that mad?
Mm-hmm. And you very well might.
Yeah.
It is not going to get better anytime soon. I mean, the Bible's pretty clear about that. And when we look at not only the divisions within our own countrymen, there are really two countries living in America, and they don't mix well. But then that division and hatred and dissension is being actively, intentionally encouraged by third-party state actors like Russia and China and Iran. And they're actually very effective at doing so. And then, on top of that, they're pumping fentanyl into our country, and they're, you could go on down the list of all the things that are conspiring to tear our country apart. And the only thing we can do to fix that is to get much more intentional about putting it back together. And we do that by reaching out to our neighbors, reaching out to our men in our circle, our men's group, and intentionally starting to form the bonds of community again that have been so just torn apart and neglected over the past 20 or 30 years. It used to be when I did some research and found my great-great-great-grandfather in 1850s in England, part of his job was to administer it was called a mutual aid society. This is before they had health insurance and, homeowners insurance and car insurance and all that kind of stuff. And so the churches would put together their own sort of insurance policies by having a voluntary mutual aid society. And my grandfather would go around and sign people up for this, and everybody would pitch in a little bit if there was a need. they would get several hundred people, and he would put it out to the community. Okay, so and so's got to go to the hospital, got to get surgery. So and so's house burned down, whatever, and they would collectively put in the money that it took to help those people, and then they knew that if they had a problem, they would do that for them as well. And it was a precursor to modern insurance. But one of the problems with the fact that we have modern insurance is that we don't feel the need to join together to help people anymore. And Americans are amazingly generous people when they know there's a need, but we just don't express needs like that much anymore. And the government has sort of usurped that responsibility that I believe belongs to the church. The government has taken it and said, with a step between us, and said, I'll take money from you at the point of a gun, and then I'll issue an anonymous check to these people over here to try to buy their votes. And what that does is, rather than create the gratitude that comes with generosity, it creates resentment. Because if you're getting a check from an impersonal entity for $600, you're a lot of people would just go, well, why isn't it $800? That guy got more than I did. And there's no impetus to gratitude. And gratitude, so it destroys the magic of charity. And so I just think that the only way that we're going to turn this around is by intentionally putting together groups of people who are all about improving our chances, improving our resiliency as a community. And so when there is a disaster, we're going to put that together. And there are groups doing it. I mean, you got the Cajun Navy that goes out and helps people during disasters. You've got Baptist Men's Union. You've got the Believers Chapel in Olean, New York, that does such a great job helping out when there's disasters or some kind of problem in their community. There are people doing it, but we need to get a lot more intentional and a lot more people that are joining with that.
Yeah, when you talk about the charity aspect of things, I think they've actually done some scientific research on surveying people who are giving and the ones that are receiving, and both of them, in the instance of like genuine charity, feel gratitude or feel a good feeling for giving. And you take all that away, and it makes it a lot harder. And it's harder for people to give when they're taxed out the wazoo. I mean, I understand the concept of, okay, but if we work together, then we have a vehicle that can work better, and it's supposed to, right? Like I think I'm not saying it is, but the goal is, and
I get you.
The government tells us that it is so that they can make sure that it's on the up and up. But it's not.
And really, it's more about the government extending its control into the realm of church. So, people are always worried about us putting up a Christmas tree in the town square and say, oh, it's a violation of the separation of church and state. We need to be more worried about the incursion of the state on the church, because those sorts of things were given to the church as parallel structures of government for the very reason that when the government does it, it gives the government way too much control. And not only that, it actually exacerbates the problems it's meant to address, because you have this impersonal entity that, oh, by the way, can print money, sending you money. And so it destroys the gratitude. If you're in need and I give you $1,000 out of my pocket to help you make your mortgage this month or something, you understand, I just gave you a part of my life. I had to work for a couple of days to make that money. And so I just basically worked for you for a couple of days. And you get that. That's a natural outgrowth of that kind of generosity. And so you're naturally grateful. And then when you see somebody else in need, you remember that and you go, oh, that feels pretty good. I'm gonna try to do that myself. They've done studies where you take two families that are both under the poverty line, like making $35,000, $40,000 a year. One of them gets their $35,000 or $40,000 from government programs, and the other one works to make their $35,000 or $40,000. That family that works to make their $35,000 or $40,000 will be 7 times more generous than the family who gets their money from the government. So the government does not engender gratitude. It doesn't encourage charity. It actually stifles it. And it does it in a way that gives the government far too much control so that they can essentially try to buy votes and do that through programs that, taking money from me that I would certainly not support if it was voluntary. And it's just a really bad system. And the government is not going to let go of that anytime soon. But we can step up and say, I'm going to be generous anyway. I'm going to reach out to my community anyway. And it's more about more than just giving money. It's about reaching out and saying, I have a skill. I can, I'm a plumber, or I'm an electrician, or I can do budgeting or something. And saying, I'm going to offer that skill to my community in a way that when there's somebody that's in need that just can't afford to pay me, I'm just going to do it anyway. When we see I always told my sons that if you see your neighbor digging a ditch, it's unmanly for you to stand there and watch him. You better get in the ditch and help him. That's what men do, is we pitch in. And there's a great amount of satisfaction that comes with that. There's a great amount of meaning and purpose that comes with being that kind of person who sees a problem and does something about it, fixes it. Doesn't say, oh man, the government ought to fix those stupid potholes. Just grab a shovel and go out there and fill them yourself. Here in Panama, people have to be that way because the government's very small and weak. And so the government can't fix everything. And so people have a different mindset here. When there's a problem like that, like potholes in the road or whatever, the men of the community get together and go out and fix it. They pool their resources and they just get together and they make the problem go away. And I learned from, living here that, man, that's a very effective way to solve the problems of society without raising everybody's taxes. And everybody knows that it's very inefficient for the government to try to fix all those problems because there's so much overhead in the government that for every dollar the government takes in taxes, only about 60 cents makes it out the other side to any sort of program because of the friction that the government represents. And so, I mean, you could make a very strong case for why it would make a lot of sense for churches and communities and neighborhoods to get together and to say, we are going to stand up and prepare, because even if things are, pretty much okay right now, they might not always be. And when a need arises, we want to have the relationships built already so that I know where the guy is who has some medical training, or I know where the guy is who has some construction experience or whatever, so we can reach out to those people and pull them together and say, hey, let's go fix this problem. We saw that in North Carolina after the hurricanes last year. A lot of people doing that. And of course, the government got really worried about it and started stepping in and telling people they couldn't do it. And that is a perfect example of why the government shouldn't be in charge of those things. Because the civilians that were doing it were very effective and very nimble and very efficient, especially cost efficient. Whereas the government spent, hundreds of millions of dollars and came in, and a lot of that money just went into people's pockets and didn't actually get to the people in need. There needs to be a movement across America of people saying we're not going to depend on the government. We're not going to allow the government to take this responsibility away from us, and we're going to stand up and do it ourselves. And I detail in my book how to do that. I'm actually finishing a second book now that talks about using men's ministries in churches to form the nucleus of those kinds of crisis preparedness groups. And instead of making it a tea circle where we sit around and talk about our feelings of a ministry to the men, let's make it a ministry through the men to the community and give men something tangible and manly to do to get out and make our communities better, safer, more friendly, etc.
I definitely know and see that those relationships that we form, like that's the bubble, right? And
Mhm.
in the bubble now we have everything we need, you know. And if you do that right, then you've got lots of bubbles, and then those bubbles can intersect with each
That's
other,
right.
so have even more. And like so like I'm gonna say I'm a Christian conservative in terms of my beliefs and my values. When I look at what's happening in Washington, I can't say that the people who call themselves Christians and conservatives line up with my beliefs and values. And I definitely can't say that the people in Washington on the liberal side line up with my beliefs and values. But I can say that in my bubble, right, my friends that would identify as liberal, we actually agree on more things, right? We
Mhm.
actually have more common ground when we view it from that lens of who
Yeah.
is in the circle that I'm talking to.
That's because if you're watching those people in Washington, D.C. or whatever through the lens of mainstream media or politics, what you're actually seeing is a caricature of them. And as you just pointed out, when you get to know people personally, you start to realize we got a lot more in common than we have apart. Here in Panama, I live up in a little community up in the mountains, a small community, about 6,000 people. And there's maybe 100 gringos that live up here, retirees and stuff like that. And they come from all, backgrounds in terms of politics and religion and everything else. And most of them are people that I would never have hung out with in America because they just don't share my values at all. But up here, beggars really can't be choosers. So if you want to speak English with somebody, you're going to have to make friends with people that think a lot differently than you. And what we found is that some of our best friends that live up here are people who are New Age Wiccan weirdos, and they're very liberal. And as we get to know one another, of course, there are certain topics you kind of studiously avoid. But what we've heard from them over and over again is they'll say, "Well, wait a minute, aren't you a Christian? Aren't you a conservative?" And I'll say, "Yeah," and they'll say, "But you're so nice. Why are you so nice? Like I thought you'd be so judgmental and you'd be so hateful, and because I'm gay or whatever." And I just always say that's because you have been told a lie. What you've been told, you've been shown a caricature of Christian conservatives that's hateful and judgmental and not loving, and that's not who we are. And in the same way, we have been shown a caricature of people on the left that is hateful. And when you get to know them, you find out that they are insecure and they're unhappy, and they need somebody to love them, and they need somebody to help them. And they, by and large, won't help each other. And so when people in our community need help, they come looking for the Christian conservatives, which is interesting because they know that they'll get treated well. And so, I think part of the reason is just that the media, and like I say, there are these entities, not just the media, but Russia is intentionally trying to cause division in our country, and we have all been victimized by that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for sure. And we don't make it any better when we just keep eating, I mean, getting your news from anybody except for Chuck Holton is is eating Cheetos, it's not going to help you.
Yeah, I like Cheetos, but they're not real good for you.
Right, exactly. Exactly. So Chuck, I know that I think we've talked about this before. You wrote a book. I mean, you've written lots of books, which I think is awesome. But you wrote a book several years ago called Making Men.
Mhm.
That book, one of the guys in our church bought it and was like, "This is amazing. We need to." I think we probably boosted your book sales pretty heavily because all the guys in our church bought the book, and we had several small groups going through it and talking about it and learning from it. Um, and you know, I know that that has had a massive impact on the community that I'm connected with, and so I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about your philosophy
kind of behind that book and maybe the story of how you got to that place.
Yeah, I woke up one day when I was in my mid-30s and realized I had three young sons, and I'm supposed to make men out of these guys, and I'm not really sure I've got that figured out for myself yet. And so I thought I need to become an expert on the topic of manhood if I'm going to do a good job of this noble pursuit of making men out of my boys. And so in that process, which took about 3 years, I interviewed a whole bunch of older men that I thought kind of had things figured out. I went through the Bible with this particular focus on what it says about manhood, and good and bad. And then looked at some of the manhood rituals that have been in place for cultures around the world throughout history. Because many cultures around the world have had a particular, specific, intentional manhood ritual that a boy has to go through, and once he completes that, he's considered to be a man. And surprisingly enough, it almost always happens around the same age, between the ages of 12 and 14. And here in America, we don't have a manhood ritual, and we don't think you're a man until you're, 21 or maybe even older than that. And so I decided to try to make a curriculum on manhood, because every young man at some point when he's 12 or 14, maybe even younger than that, starts to ask the question of himself, like, what do I have to do to be a man? How do I show the world that I'm not a boy anymore, that I'm now a man? And a lot of the unhealthy behaviors that we see boys engaging in are their attempts to answer that question. So, I'm going to jump off the roof, or I'm going to buy a crotch rocket and drive it 900 miles an hour down the freeway, or, those kinds of things. Just trying to overcome that insecurity, acting out of their weakness, and saying, how do I become strong? Putting a tattoo in the middle of my face, all that kind of stuff. It's just like, there's not necessarily anything immoral about it, but I always told my boys, like, for example, I don't care if you get a tattoo, but if you're going to get a tattoo, don't act out of your weakness. Don't do it because you're trying to present a facade of manhood. Just, be manly. And then if you feel like you need to get a tattoo, then fine. And you know what? None of my sons have ever decided to get a tattoo, because I presented it in the light of that's a sign of weakness in men. And I don't believe it always is, but I think very often, I think a lot of men would agree, even men that have a bunch of tattoos, yeah, I got this because I was trying to look like a big tough guy. And so I don't care if you get a tattoo, but and I don't think it's sinful or anything, but if you're going to do it, just don't do it out of your weakness. And so then that begs the question, well, then what does it mean? How do I become a man? How do I show that I am a man without those external indicators? And so I tried to put together a curriculum that was easy enough for a 12-year-old to understand and memorize. I came up with a acronym, because the military, you always make an acronym out of things. And it was the acronym SHAPE. The SHAPE is the shape of a man is, submit, honor, assess and improve, perish and provide, and engage. And what that just comes down to is you have to, if you want to be a man, you got to submit to the one who bestows manhood, because it is something that is bestowed on you. And that's your creator, who created you to be a man with the intention of you becoming a man. You have to know what things are valuable and what things are worthless, and you have to treat them as such. And that's what honor is all about. Honor is just valuing things rightly. A man doesn't just walk by problems. A man sees problems and takes steps to fix them. So the difference between a boy and a man is, if you dump a pail of kitchen garbage in the middle of the living room floor, and your son walks through and goes, ew, and just walks around it and walks off, he's not a man yet. But if he walks through and goes, that shouldn't be there, and he picks it up and does something about it, now he's becoming a man. Those are the indicators, the internal indicators you can look for. And then a man is intended by God to die to his own desires and provide for the needs of others. And when he does so, he will have the most meaning and purpose in his life that he can have. And so it's a sort of paradox that giving up what you want actually gets you what you were made to need, and that is that meaning and purpose. And then the world encourages you to be passive in every way, because a passive man is a safe man. Men aren't designed to be safe. We're designed to be dangerous, but disciplined. And so we need to engage in every area of our life, not be passive, shun passivity, hunt it down and kill it, root it out everywhere we find it. And the more we engage with the world around us, and I come up with 7 facets of life, we need to engage with our relationships, our spiritual life, our physical life, our financial life, our academic life, our social life, and our relational life. As we engage in those areas, we become more and more powerful as men to impact the world around us. And so that's the book in a nutshell. You don't have to buy it now because I just explained the whole thing to you. And my book, Prowess, which came out after that, sort of takes just the engage part and expands on that even further into what that means for a young man who is looking to lead a fulfilling life. Because I started with the success of Making Men, I would go and speak, and I always had a line of guys lined up afterwards to ask me questions and talk to me. A lot of them are, college age, 10, 19, 20 years old, whatever. And they all had very similar questions. Like, I've never had a girlfriend. I don't know how to even start to get one. Or I got this girl that kind of likes me. How do I know if she's the right one? Because I've been told that there's one person out there for me, and I have to find that one. So I've been dating this one for 7 years, trying to decide if she's the right one or not, but I don't know how to figure that out, which is terrible. And the right answer is that you don't find the right one, you become the right one. And if you are the man that you're meant to be before God, you can pick pretty much any daughter of his and make her happy for the rest of her life. And so, my more recent books have been sort of spin-offs of Making Men.
I think it's awesome. And like I said, it's been, the Making Men in particular has definitely had a big impact. And I appreciate that. I know, walking my boys through that was helpful for them.
Yeah.
There was a guy in our church who, they're leading a group going through it, and he realized that a couple of the guys couldn't read very well. So he went home and he pulled out his computer and he read the book and saved it on a thumb drive and gave it to them so they could listen to it.
Wow.
And they would actually be a part of it. So
have him send me that file. I want to hear it.
I'll have to find it. He actually passed away, and when he did, it was it was kind of crazy because we're like,
that's even more amazing.
Yeah. So we all kind of treasure that audio file. I've got to find it.
It's like a bootleg audio version because I wanted to make an audio version of that book, and the publisher wouldn't allow me to. And I mean, Making Men. You're talking about Making Men?
Yeah.
Oh no, never mind. I've got an audio version. That one I did make an audio version. I'm talking about an earlier book.
Gotcha. But yeah, we've got an audio version of it floating around somewhere. So, but the good
I'll
news,
send you the professionally done one that I read.
We have enough books that we bought lying around, so it covers any bootlegging.
That's okay. Look, whatever God wants to do with whatever humble work I put together is fine by me. Yeah. It's not about the money.
So you've kind of answered this next question, but I'll ask you the question anyway, and maybe you can kind of sum that up into one answer. That question is, what does it take to be a man?
Yeah, I think that is the question of our age. The world will tell you that being a man is about strength. It's about being a tough guy. It's about being successful, making a lot of money, or all those kind of worldly things. My assertion is that when you meet a real man, you'll know it, and it's not about what he looks like. It's not about how much money he has. You'll know it because of his character. Character is something that exudes from you and that people pick up just without even trying. They just know there's something about this guy, that he's solid. And so what I tried to do in Making Men was to sort of codify that and say, here's the yardstick. Here's what you have to do, young men, if you want people to look at you that way and say, this kid's got it going on. I need to write, I've been meaning to write a book, maybe I'll do that next, on the topic of hustle. Because I think the concept of hustle is something that's not taught in schools, and it should be, and is something that's sadly lacking in most young men today because they engage in so much passive activity that it quelches the fire of conquering, the need to conquer that's inside them. And so, I don't think hustle is necessarily something you can, take somebody who just doesn't have it and you can just give it to them. But I don't necessarily think it's something you're just born with either. Because I was a spectacularly lazy young man until I joined the military, and then I got out of the military and got connected with some people who were really going places. And as I hung around those people, I thought, I started to realize, like, I want to be that way. I like that. And I learned the art of hustle from those people. It's more about just working hard. And as a man, I think our highest calling is to redeem the world around us, just to make it better. And that because that is being like Christ. That's what Christ came to do, came to redeem the world. And so as we seek to redeem the world around us, we have to confront the passivity that we have in our own lives. We have to stand up and be courageous. We have to, sort of take on all of the facets of manhood that when you ask a group of men, what does it mean to be a man? You get a lot of different answers. But if you try to boil all those answers down to their most foundational precept, it really comes down to redeeming the world around you and all the different outgrowths of what that means. So as I said, SHAPE was an attempt to put that into a measuring stick that guys can stand up against and go, okay, I measure up in this, and I need to work on this, and try to understand the process of that. And it's fairly simple, but it's just not easy to accomplish.
Yeah, I think that's everything that's good in life is it may be simple, but it's not easy.
I think we have a real big problem in America with young men who are, for lack of a better term, incels. Incel is a legit
celibate is the
involuntary celibate. They're guys that are, spend a lot hours every day playing video games and watching pornography, and that encompasses about 99% of young men today. And those two things are such a toxic mix, and they create kind of a free-floating frustration in young men because they're watching the most intimate of human experiences, and nobody will do that with me because I'm a loser sitting in my mom's basement playing video games. They don't understand that. They don't get that. They just think that, well, the world is arrayed against me. And so they get this sort of free-floating anger, and then they find each other online and Reddit, Twitch groups and stuff like that, and start to sort of stew in their own juices, and they start to idolize these guys that have gone out and struck a blow for the movement by committing mass murder or killing Charlie Kirk or things like that. And virtually all of the mass shootings that we see in America over the last 5-10 years have been attributed to involuntary celibates. A lot of them are, I think there's a subset of involuntary celibates that goes so far as to say, I can't get a girl, so I'm going to become a girl. And they become transvestites. And I'm just going to become what I wish to have. And of course, that is not fulfilling in any way, shape, or form. And it leads to this pretty severe mental illness. And so the FBI has been tracking involuntary celibate culture, and says that I was talking to an FBI agent several years ago, and he said, I've identified at least 40 mass shootings in the last 2 years that have been attributable to somebody who, whether or not they called themselves an incel, sometimes they do, but whether or not they recognized it in themselves, they certainly qualified. Latchkey kid, played a lot of video games, watched a lot of pornography, and just got angry at the world and went out with a bang. So it is a huge problem in our society. And as men, we've got to start reaching out to young men and getting them away from those screens, getting them involved in stuff that makes them useful, productive members of society, teaching them skills that make them useful in a crisis. And so what I've done is started a nonprofit, and we're starting to collect donations very soon to form an academy for young men where they can come for a summer or for a year and not be exposed to those screens anymore and actually do manly things, whether it's weapons handling or what land navigation or wilderness survival or construction or mechanics or rappelling, whatever. We're going to train them to be useful and productive in a crisis, and hopefully give them a sense of what hustle actually looks like so that they can go out and conquer the world rather than conquering some virtual game that really doesn't do anything for society.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Let me know when that gets closer, because I'll definitely help you get the word out. Things. I think that's
Thanks.
awesome. Chuck, 2 more questions that I like to ask all my guests. The first one is, if you could go back in time and visit 10-year-old Chuck, what are you going to tell him?
Buy Apple computer stock.
Excellent.
Yeah, I would give every penny I have to go back and live my life over again exactly as it happened. I've got lots of regrets, lots of things that I wish I could do differently, but on balance, my life has been so amazing, especially with my children. I would give everything I have today to go back just to when my children were little kids and to live those days over again. And so I'll just offer a piece of advice to young parents out there. Boy, don't miss it. Just savor every moment you have, even in the difficult times when your kids are keeping you awake at night or going through the diapers like there's no tomorrow, like a Christmas goose, or being teenagers. Enough said. Every minute of that is so sweet. Once they're gone, it's hard not to get emotional looking back at those. And I'm so grateful for my 6 grandchildren. Love them with everything in me, but I don't get to live with them. And it's bittersweet in a way, because as I look at my grandkids, I see and remember what it was like to live with my little children, and I would just give everything I have to go back and do it all over again. It was such a wonderful time. So don't miss it. Life goes by quick. That's what I would tell my 10-year-old self.
Excellent. And what is your best advice for the men that are listening today?
Train yourself to be tough, flexible, and optimistic, and never allow yourself to make decisions based on comfort, fear, or pride. Because you will virtually always make a bad decision if it's motivated by comfort, fear, or pride. So if you can approach every decision you have to make in your life and ask yourself, do I want to choose this option because it's the comfortable option, or that's a safe option, or because I need to prove something? Then don't do that. Choose the other option. And the right option in your life for almost every decision is the one you don't want to do. But if you can, over time, build the force of will, which is it's a mental muscle. Discipline is a mental muscle. But if you can build the force of will in your life to make the hard decision in every case, your life will be you'll beat 99% of the guys out there. You'll be so far ahead of the pack that there won't even be any competition. And so that's the best advice I can give to a young man today.
Excellent advice. Appreciate it. Chuck, if the guys want to connect with you, kind of maybe buy your books, get plugged in with the work you're doing, what's the best way for that to happen?
Then go to chuckholton.com or holtonrooms.com, either of those. And Google my name. You'll find out way more about me than you ever wanted to know. And you can find my YouTube channel at The Hot Zone with Chuck Holton. And actually, I just started another YouTube channel called Border Global Adventures, I think is what it's called. My team came up with that. I'm not sure I like it. But where I'm just putting up videos of the places I go that don't make it into the news. But I see a lot of amazing and beautiful things in my travel, going to 25 countries a year. And so I've started another channel just to put up stuff that kind of behind the scenes stuff that you don't normally see.
Nice. Awesome. I haven't seen that one yet, so I'll check it out. But well, man, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with our listeners today, and appreciate the work you do, and yeah, your friendship over the years. It's been good stuff, so I appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure. And we will get you on my podcast sometime to talk about all this stuff too.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Appreciate it.
Chuck, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. Like I said in the interview, I respect the work you've done, and I appreciate the investment that you've made into my life and into the lives of our listeners as well. So thank you. Appreciate it. Keep up the good work. Stay safe. Don't get hit by any stray bullets. And, guys, you can connect with Chuck at chuckholton.com or the Hot Zone podcast. Follow him on YouTube. Make sure you connect with him. His links are also in the show notes. Make sure you get his book, Making Men and Prowess, and the other ones that are available as well. Good stuff. He's an excellent writer, and I want to make sure you give him your time. It's worth it. So, guys, make sure you subscribe to Manlihood Plus for bonus content. It's going to be at YouTube and at Spotify. Pick up the book, Fight Like Hell, A Journal for Men Who Won't Back Down. 30 days, guys, are going to make you a better man because you're going to dig in deep and deal with the junk. So, highly recommend you get the book. Don't forget our Facebook group, the Manlihood Man Cave, and leave us a rating or a review if you're listening to one of the podcast platforms so that the algorithms know that this is good. Because the algorithms are AI and they don't care, but you know and you care. So interact with it. Interact with this content so that the robot overlords don't punish us. All right, guys. Men need more. The world needs more men like you to stand up and to stand firm and to fight. And I know that's what you're doing. I know you're fighting on the front lines to protect your family, to protect your community, to make it better. Keep it up. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'll see you next time.
Thanks for being part of Manlihood. Now it's time for you to rise up and take action. Join the Manlihood Man Cave, our free Facebook group, and connect with the other men on the same journey. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share that episode with a friend. For more, visit manlihood.com.